Awesome. Thank you. So just to give you a background on my project, I'm doing on how the media has falsely portrayed sharks in the environment, whether
Okay.
that's through Hollywood movies, such as more so the more recent ones like The Shallows, 47 meters down. And the bigger one is like the over exaggeration, if you will, of like attacks and stuff like that. And I just want to start out by asking you that when you read articles describing like shark attacks, a lot of words they will use in the articles are monsters, you know what I mean, killers, savage, brutal, like all this negative words that like don't really paint the full picture. How do you feel like does that play a big factor in kind of like pulling the everyday societal person towards viewing them as just killers and evil?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, as somebody that likes fishes, or just from an evolutionary biology perspective, is we look at those things and call them, I mean, just fascinating because of their body forms are essentially unchanged for millions of years at this point. And I mean, they've been doing the same thing for, tens of millions of years. And they're very efficient at what they do because they tend to eat other critters. We tend to, respect them more. We should respect them more. But absolutely, the language that's used is always bad because, or not always bad, but it can be very misleading. Again, saying that something's an eating machine or, insatiable or, things like that, which aren't true at all.
Right.
These things are just going through the environment and they become sated. They'll eat until they're full and then they'll go on about their way. But
So that's good. I'm trying to think. I saw something else kind of in response to that in another article. It said that sharks are very important for keeping ecosystems in the ocean balanced and kind of in like a healthy like cycle, if you will. What can you add to that? Like how do they keep that cycle balanced?
okay, so if thinking about top predators and what they often do is that they'll focus on the more abundant individuals of their prey items. And so if species A, and if you get like 5 species or whatever, and species A starts becoming very abundant, then those shark species or those predatory species might start focusing on those because there's a bunch of them and they're easy to find. If there's no sharks there, then it could be that species A, that population continues to grow too large, increasing competition and either the results of density dependent population limits to growth are things like not having enough food or having disease spread rapidly in a population. And so you might end up with a population collapse if you don't have those big predators there. And so they can help maintain a healthy system in that so that you won't have like density dependent disease run through it. But you often also, by having those big predators, you won't have like one species becoming super dominant in that system. So the classic examples are of pies or sea stars in ecology where they eat, when they're in a system, they eat a bunch of mussels and barnacles and things like that. If you take those predators away, then instead of having 20 or 30 species of mussels and barnacles, you only have 2.
Right.
And it's because they reduce that competition that allows lots of species to be there. And so sharks act as that kind of top predator, making sure that there's no one, and it's not that they're intentionally doing it, but that no one species becomes super abundant.
Yeah, awesome. So have you in particular or a colleague perhaps you work with within like the collection of fish species, have you guys done any like research projects having to do with that kind of topic of sharks keeping ecosystems balanced or anything at all that like kind of negates the fact that they're just malicious killers that eat people?
I haven't, and none of my close friends work on sharks.
Okay.
One of the top kind of science communicators that works on sharks is David Schiffman. And he does a whole lot of kind of press releases and stuff like that, trying to communicate the research that goes on in sharks, and trying to, again, get the media to stop saying things like killing machine.
Yeah, yeah. Would you say that, I guess from your standpoint and from your field, has the research on sharks grown not only in numbers of organizations and people doing it, but like the amount of technology we have now allows us to understand them more and understand how important they are to our planet as a whole.
Absolutely, in multiple ways. One, just thinking about population perspective and harvesting and over harvesting them, that we've been able to use DNA and estimate population size in ancient population sizes, which indicates that their populations have dramatically declined. We can also use things like radio tags and transmitters to try to understand where these things are moving in the environment, where do they spend most of their time eating, and especially with juveniles, and trying to understand how juveniles use different types of habitats. So those juveniles are often using very different habitats than parents. And so if we wipe out those habitats where the juveniles are growing and require them, then we're not going to get that recruitment. So it'll hurt populations even more. But we've only been really able to do that with the advancement of smaller and smaller tracking and radio devices. So instead of having like a big clunky camcorder type thing, you can have things that are relatively small and don't affect swimming ability.
Oh, all right. Well, thank you. That's awesome. That's all I about have. Honestly, that is just needed to be a short little interview.
Okay.
Thank you so much for your time. I really
Yep.
appreciate it.